Hello my friends and welcome to the channel. I've been ripping some Darktide after the massive character overhaul patch and putting in some time with the big chunky Ogryn, setting myself up as a massive meat shield that can save the entire team when things start to look like a game over is on the horizon. This build stacks a ton of damage resistance, toughness recovery, melee damage, and crowd control to create a near invincible melee bruiser that can basically salvage any situation. This build can struggle sometimes with raw damage, but it makes up for that by simply being able to outlast almost anything. You might not take down enemies quite as fast, but you can do it in almost complete safety with multiple ways to recover any damage that is thrown at you and stun any enemies that come close to you. Overall, this Ogryn build has felt like it can make a serious impact in almost any situation. And your teammates will be glad to have you around since this build is great at keeping them alive and keeping any annoying enemies from making trouble for them. The first two talents in this build are Heavyweight and Linchpin. Heavyweight gives you a huge stat boost against large enemies, and Linchpin gives a massive boost in your toughness regeneration when you're close to your teammates. Next, I take Furious for a melee damage boost, and then Smash 'em and the Best Defense, which both allow you to regain 25% toughness when hitting enemies with a heavy melee attack. With both of these talents active, you can regain up to 50% of your total toughness on a single heavy melee attack, because one activates after hitting the first enemy in a mob, and the second activates on hitting multiple enemies. These, combined with the Linchpin talent, allow you to restore a massive amount of toughness very quickly, keeping you alive quite easily in melee. After this, I take the toughness boost and then the bombs away cluster grenade box as my blitz. Now personally, I do like the big nuke grenade quite a lot, but because the big grenade is on the other side of the talent tree, I had to go down the middle here to save a few points and get all of the stuff I want later down the tree. Next, I take Slam for the melee impact bonus, then the toughness boost, and then I go into the Indomitable combat ability, which is a massively improved version of the Bull Rush ability that doubles the charge distance and gives you an attack speed and movement speed buff after use. I also modify this ability with the Stomping Boots talent, which restores 10% toughness per enemy hit by the charge, so it's quite easy to get back to maximum toughness on one Bull Rush. I actually don't take the second modifier for this ability, just to save a point for other passive bonuses later on. This ability sounds very simple and almost kind of underwhelming on paper, but in practice I've found it's essentially a massive get out of jail free card for basically any situation, and it's very useful both as a defensive option to save a bad situation, and as an offensive tool to clear space and let your team quickly move through basically any area. After Indomitable, I take the Rending bonus and the Health bonus, and then I cross into the middle of the talent tree, going for the Hard Knocks talent, which stacks melee damage bonuses. For the aura on this build, I chose to go with Stay Close, giving you and any allies in Coherency 20% extra toughness regeneration. This further increases how fast you can regain your toughness as the team's bruiser tank, and it helps your team stay alive by letting them recover toughness more efficiently. After the aura talent, I spread out to all three sides of the talent tree, picking up some toughness boosts and a few very nice passive abilities that help this build stay alive and help the team. On the right side, I just put 1 point into the Towering Presence talent, which increases your coherency radius by 50%. This means you're in coherency with your squad more often from further away, so both you and your teammates will just spend more time benefiting from your toughness regeneration. On the left side of the tree, I take the Delight in Destruction talent, which can stack damage resistance if there are any bleeding enemies nearby. But the talent that I actually care about here is Dominate, which grants you 30% rending after taking down an elite enemy. Rending basically acts as armor penetration, so this talent makes it easier to take down armored enemies like Maulers and Reapers a lot easier after you proc it. Now for the rest of the talents on this build, I'm going back down the center of the talent tree, starting with the Get Stuck In talent. This one is actually a low-key lifesaver for you and your entire team, granting a 20% movement speed bonus and immunity to stuns and suppression for 4 seconds after you activate your Indomitable ability. So not only do you knock down every enemy that was threatening your team, your allies can also move to safety faster and avoid being slowed while they're moving, allowing you to save your entire team from some really messy situations. Next, I take Bruiser, which just allows you to regen your combat ability faster, reducing the cooldown every time you or an ally takes down an elite enemy. After this, you get another toughness boost, and then the Won't Give In talent, which again is just another amazing ability that helps you save the entire team from the brink of death. This talent gives you 20% damage reduction for each ally that's incapacitated within 20 meters, meaning you can get up to 60% damage reduction if your whole team is down and they're relying on you to save them. Finally, the last talent points for this build are all going into the keystone talents at the very end of the tree. I opted for the Feel No Pain keystone, which gives your Ogryn 10 stacks that each grant 2.5% damage reduction and toughness regeneration. So effectively, you just start with a 25% bonus to both of those stats. You lose 1 stack each time you take health damage, but you regenerate 1 stack every 6 seconds. So as long as you can keep your toughness active, you can keep that 25% bonus permanently. For modifiers on this keystone, first there is Pained Outburst, which pushes back all nearby enemies and restores 25% toughness if you lose all of your stacks. And this helps you quickly start regenerating your stacks again if you do lose them all. Next, you have the Strongest, which restores 1 stack of Feel No Pain every time you push an enemy. With these 2 talents, you should be able to quite quickly replenish your stacks anytime they're lost. Finally, there's the Toughest talent, which essentially doubles your toughness replenishment bonus from Feel No Pain, giving you 50% extra regen when at full stacks. That covers it for the talent tree, and while I was a bit hesitant at first to sacrifice the nuke grenade and the bleeding bonus on Indomitable, I feel like the coherency increase and the rending damage bonus you get by using those talent points further up the tree are quite helpful at making you and your team harder to knock down, and increasing your damage against armored enemies so you don't get stuck bashing against their helmets forever. Now that the talent tree is covered, I just want to quickly go over the gear that I've been using on this setup. Now obviously the most important piece of equipment for this build is going to be the melee weapon. From what I understand, if you're looking to maximize raw damage, the Bull Butcher Cleaver is among the best choices. It's very fast and it has a good attack pattern, allowing you to slice through waves of enemies pretty easily. However, for my melee weapon pick, I've been running the Power Maul almost exclusively, simply for the utility of being able to knock down and stun basically any enemy that isn't a boss. It might not have the raw damage output of the Cleaver, but I found the Power Maul is just amazing at allowing me to control the flow of an entire horde of enemies. Heavy attacks knock down or stun basically any enemy, and even the light attack chain with the Power Maul has a knockdown. This weapon can also be activated with the special attack to create a large power burst on impact, adding even more knockdown potential and increasing the damage. So while it might not kill enemies quite as fast, the Power Maul allows you to just infinitely chain heavy attack knockdowns against whole mobs of enemies, restoring your toughness with each attack and taking whole groups out of the fight. For blessings on my melee weapon, I just always try and get Confident Strike on there. This regenerates toughness on chained melee hits, and it adds even more recovery onto your melee attacks, making it harder for enemies to break your toughness. Now for a ranged weapon, I've basically just been running the Mark V and Mark VII heavy stubbers, because I find few things more satisfying than blasting 100 rounds out of a heavy machine gun. I found it to be pretty useful to deal with things like Poxbursters, charging hounds, and gunners at medium range, but it does lack some of the DPS without the gunner talents that the Ogryn has access to. So on that note, it seems like the Rumbler grenade launcher and the Ripper autogun are the most recommended meta picks for Ogryn ranged weapons, so use that information however you see fit. For your curios, try and get extra wounds and toughness and damage resistance against ranged enemies like gunners and snipers. One of the biggest threats to this build is a pack of gunners or snipers in a hard to reach spot, so I find getting some resistance against ranged enemies is quite helpful. And with that, this build is basically covered. I've enjoyed playing this way more than I thought I would. I actually only tried this build out so I could finish a penance on my Ogryn, and now I honestly feel like I don't even want to go back to the gunner build I was using before, because this Bruiser setup is just really fun and it's so good for keeping the whole team alive. Let me know what you think of the build, anything you might change, and how it works for you if you try it yourself. Thanks for checking out the video. I've got links to my Twitch stream and Discord server down below for anyone interested. And until next time, stay safe out there in the Hive City.